All right, welcome to How to Become TV. My name is Jace. I have my partner in crime here with me, Mark Rossetti. Thanks for joining us yet again, Mark. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday, Christmas, all that. We lost Mark for 2 weeks, so we're really glad to have him back now. And he is on time, ready to go. And he has some new updates to share with us. So he's been at Catalyst class now for a week and a half, about a week and a half already,
yeah.
Or 1 full week already?
1 full week. 1 full week.
Yeah, one full week. So if you guys have seen week 1 to week 4, this is week 5. If you haven't, go back and check out week 1 to week 4. We have about 20 minutes here. We're just going to go right into it right away. Thank you, Mark, for joining us again. So tell us how your first week back was after the holidays.
Totally. So the first week back, we've absolutely hit the ground running. We are on to a whole new concept called, working with servers. So in other words, working with the back end of applications that users don't usually see, but that's really important to, actually using an application. So now we're able to build that, and that opens up the possibilities hugely of what we can do.
Awesome. Fantastic. So can you tell us, you did some sort of personal project that was I don't know whether you're working with the API with Twilio or you're making some sort of plugin, or tell us about it.
Absolutely true. So there's a service called Twilio, and Twilio basically lets you communicate with phones from computers. So in other words, you could use a computer to send a text to a phone, or to receive a phone call and record the message into a text file, or to do any combination of phones and computers you can really imagine. And so what's really neat is if you're able to build a server, which is what we just studied, is how to build a server, then you can actually make a phone call, or you can actually send text messages to people on an automated basis. Like, when a particular event happens, like if they get an email, you could send them a text message, or whatever you can imagine, really.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So for my own personal project, I had this idea. This is honestly just for fun. I don't intend to turn this into anything too big, but like everybody has a small group of friends that is, their group of buddies they really wish they could keep in contact with. So I was thinking every week you get an automated text message out to all those people, and then they can respond with like the most interesting thing that happened to them that week. So 160 characters or less, very short, and then it automatically builds a blog post that is maintained in a consistent area, so everybody can go and visit that blog and see what all their close 4 or 5 friends have been up to. So not a big community like Facebook or something, but more about your own close friends. And so it involves sending, from a technical perspective, sending an automated text message out, waiting for responses, recording the responses into a text file, and then from a text file automatically generating a blog that looks beautiful. So there's a lot of interesting steps there.
Wow. Yeah. So you're saying an audio file would be converted into a text file?
No, they would send a text message. So you're just doing text to text.
Okay, I see. Cool. Great. And so you talked about you built servers. What kind of tools did you use to build those servers?
Sure. Well, first, just to speak on that distinction of the word server, I think maybe people are used to hearing the word server in the context of you open Google Chrome or whatever, and then you go to a website, and the server gives you a web page. All right, well, that's half the picture. The other half of the picture is, if you think about Facebook, if you upload a photo to Facebook, then you're going to get, maybe that's going to find all the faces in that photo. Well, finding the faces in the photo actually has nothing to do with visiting Facebook, the website. That's something that happens in the background. And that whole background task is being handled by a totally different computer that probably is doing that background task and then returning the results to you, let's say, a minute later, 2 minutes later. It's a different process. So that's also a server. It's just a different type. Anyway, the technologies we're using, to answer your question, is primarily Node.js, Node.js. And Node.js is a very new technology. It's only a couple of years old, and it allows you to use JavaScript on a server, which is well, that's a fairly significant step, because JavaScript has usually been conceived of as a language that's all about the browser. It's all about what happens on people's personal computers. Node breaks that rule. Now you can use Node to program just about anything.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's really good. So what is the difference between something like Node.js and MySQL, which is
Hmm.
a database kind of thing? How does that work?
Sure. So MySQL is, like you say, it's about databases, and databases are the other part of the picture. So you might say, to speak very roughly, you might say there's three pieces in the picture. So there's your client, and that's a web browser. There's the server, and that could be Node, for example. And then there's some type of database that the server can talk to, and that the client will never actually talk to. You go through the server. MySQL and SQL is a particular type of database, and that's called an SQL database, unsurprisingly. Now, there's a ton of other databases. If you're working with Node, you'd probably be using what's called a NoSQL database, NoSQL. In other words, anything other than SQL, because SQL is
Okay.
well, SQL happens to be one technology, and there's right now a trend, I hear, of moving towards other non-SQL technologies.
And why is that? Do you know why?
Um, I don't know all the reasons, but
Hmm.
I think some of the reasons is that the conception of how to use databases, and again, I mean, maybe don't quote me on this, but the conception of
Hmm.
how to use databases is changing a little bit. And so sometimes you just want a really small, fast database that lives on the server, so you don't have to always be asking an outside resource for a big, long, the wait time is longer if you have to ask another computer. It's much faster to
Hmm.
just be right there. So that's an example of that would be Redis, which is small and fast.
Hmm.
Um, there's also things I think with language compatibility, and NoSQL uses languages that may be more convenient to work with for some programmers. And I don't know all the reasons. That's a good question.
Hmm.
Actually, databases is one of the next topics we'll be hitting in a couple of weeks, so I hope to have a lot
Hmm.
more to tell you about that then.
Good stuff. Well, that's great. That's great. So what was the best part of this past week?
You know, really the thrill of like building. I thought it was a really exciting experience when I could get a computer to talk to my cell phone in the real world, and without ever actually touching a web browser. Like there's no web page involved. I just wrote code that talked to my cell phone. That's amazing.
That is amazing. Wow. So you could test it on your own personal phone?
Yeah, totally. Twilio,
Wow.
Twilio is really nice. They primarily prefer that you test by not without sending text messages. They have another way to test things, just by sending a message to their server, and then they respond with like a "yeah, that worked" message. But I also did one or two real world tests just to make sure it was actually working.
Hmm. Now, I thought Twilio was a third-party app for Twitter, correct?
It is not. Twilio is
Oh,
separate from Twitter, separate deal. And
oh yeah,
Twilio,
yeah, okay.
yeah, Twilio is just all about phone and yeah, phone and computer communication, basically.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with Twitter whatsoever?
No, nothing. Totally
Okay,
different company.
okay, got it.
That's all right.
Um, so what was the most challenging part of this past week?
Um, it's really hard to debug code that you can't see the results of. If you're using a web browser and you write something and it doesn't work, you can usually see why it didn't work. Like, oh, like that box is in the wrong place, or my text didn't show up, or something like that. If it's on a server somewhere in another state, it's actually really tough. Even from a technical standpoint, even not just conceptually, from a technical standpoint, it's difficult to see what the server is doing. There are ways, but it's totally different from debugging in a browser.
And I would guess that sort of the results of your actions when you work on a server is delayed, right? So if you get some sort of information that's somehow delayed when you're working with a remote server, is that
That's
correct?
true. If you're working with a remote server, it is. Thankfully, you don't always have to work with a remote server. You can actually, this is a little weird, but you can create a server on your own computer and pretend that this one directory of your computer is actually just a server.
That's a virtual server, is that correct?
You could call it a virtual server. You could just call it a
Okay.
local server. Local is sufficient. Um,
Good stuff. Okay.
yeah.
Good stuff. So what do you have? What do you have up for the next week? What do you expect to come up in the next week?
Um, I think we are approaching databases, but we may spend a little bit more time on servers first, because right now we're writing servers. So previously, I talked about how we had written JavaScript from scratch, and then we had begun using more libraries and frameworks because you could do JavaScript really fast if you're using a library or framework, and build on what other people have already done. Right now, the past week, we've spent time writing servers from scratch. And I think in the coming week, we may begin using libraries and frameworks for servers so that we don't have to write those from scratch either.
Wow, good stuff. That's exciting. Okay,
Yep.
so you had suggested that you had something you could share with us on screen share?
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to show you my Twilio app very quickly and just kind of show you what that looks like.
Awesome.
All right, so here we go. Screen share. Okay. Oh, I'm looking at myself. All right. Okay, so we're going to go to, this is the console right here. And I've already written this app. So the way I start it up, this is going to be done locally. This is running on my local server. I'm going to type foreman start. This starts the process on my computer, and you're going to see the logs in the terminal of what the server's doing line by line. Here we go. Cool. So you can see that it started the server. The server sent a tweet to my cell phone, and then the send was successful, and the message was what happened this week. Okay, cool.
Oh, that is so cool.
Now, that was not actually a live test. That was totally fake. That was totally fake, and that went to their server, and their server said, yes, it worked, but it didn't do anything. So now we're going to put it live. So
awesome.
I have settings in my code that I can change to go from testing to live. And here we go. From and real and real. And here we go. I hope this works. With technology, you just never know.
Oh, wow.
Okay, let's see if that worked. I'm waiting on my phone. There it is. Oh, sorry. I'm going to have to turn off screen share and show you what just happened there.
Take your time.
There's a text message right there.
Oh, cool. We can see that. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
So there it is. So that's just, I don't know, it's just a really fast example. Obviously, that's not the app's full functionality. It does a lot more, but there's a sample.
That's great. Congratulations. That's awesome. That's great to actually see that. That code looked great. That's fantastic. You know what I had? Even though we said it in the video, the first time you did the screen share, we had like 7 or 8 questions, all in the same thing. Which text editor were you using? Over and over and over again. That's crazy. Even though you answer a question in a video, people will ask the same question again. So again, which text editor are you using?
Sure, that is Sublime Text 2. Sublime Text 2. And that's pretty popular.
Yeah, yeah. And I even put a link in the show notes below for that. So
cool.
If people have questions, they can. I'll put it in the link below again. This is the second time. So that's fantastic. So can you just, because I don't, we get to this point and I'm not sure which questions to ask exactly. So what more is exciting about this app that you created? Just tell us anything else you want to share about it.
Oh gee. I think one thing that's exciting about it is I feel like, so I'm only 5 weeks in, right? And I feel like at this point I can almost make an app that people would pay for, and that's kind of neat.
Yeah, that's more than kind of neat. That's fantastic. That's great. I mean, so your confidence has really built up then.
Oh, it's huge. So we spent most of the week kind of working on this Node stuff, and then we did one day with what's kind of doing a catch-up session for like 24 hours, and the catch-up session was where you could work on anything you wanted to. And so this app was my own invention for that 24-hour session, because I figured, oh, well, I want to practice the stuff that we just learned and create something. And so all the work that you just saw there, I built in about 36 hours.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that to me was like a revelation. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
in just like a stunningly short period of time, I can build something that interacts with the real world, that has an effect on people's like lives. And
That's great.
I like
Congratulations.
that.
I can see you're excited about that. We have
Totally.
some live viewers, so I'm sure they're interested to hear that. So I just want to repeat for people who haven't been following along in all 5 weeks is that uh, Mark had next to zero coding experience before he started, and he's just said quite confidently that he's confident now that he could actually build something or begin to build something that people would actually pay for. So that's really encouraging. So we had talked in the pre-show a little bit about where you are and why there's so much noise going on, and I understand you're at some place that's pretty special. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so there's a thing out in the valley called hack spaces, and maybe they exist elsewhere, but they're big out here.
Oh, sorry, Mark. What is the Valley?
Oh, the Valley is
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So yeah, the SF Bay Area.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, this is my day off from Catalyst, and I am down in Mountain View at a place called Hacker Dojo. So Hacker Dojo is totally community built and supported, by donations and people's volunteer time. And it's pretty much a warehouse where people come and set up their laptops and work. Some people who are doing startups, work here all day, and this is their primary workplace. Other people come here in the evenings after their jobs to work on their own projects. And tonight they're having kind of a happy hour meetup. Somebody brought in a keg, and they're, chatting about their projects and their dreams and the companies they're building. And so it's a pretty special space. It's full of it's full of couches, and there's a laser printer downstairs. Sorry, a 3D printer and a laser cutter downstairs. And
Oh wow.
yeah, it's pretty special.
Geek paradise. It sounds
Totally.
Yeah, I can just hear some viewers salivating right now. So that's great. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
there's a few of these out here, and they're all very cool with a lot of character.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. So we just have like about a minute or two left, but I'm at a loss at what more questions to ask. Can you tell us any other gems that happened in this past week, or maybe some of the most let's say painful experiences in the past week? Some things that were really hard. I mean, you talked about dealing with the servers that had a delayed reaction. You couldn't kind of see what was happening firsthand. Was there anything else that really made you dig down deep?
Yeah, in a different way. I guess one other lesson this week has been that no developer knows everything. Just nobody knows everything. And even to see some of our teachers, when we went off on our own projects, we all went researching our own tools that we wanted to use and our own libraries and APIs and all that stuff. And then we would call over a teacher to say, hey, can you help me out with this? And the teacher would come over and we'd say, oh yeah, I'm using such and such an API. And they say, well, what's that? Never heard of that. And so it's so funny. Really, the best thing that the teacher could do was maybe recommend a document to read or help us interpret documents that we already had. But there was no magic bullet. And that's a huge lesson, is that when you are developing, half of the job is just, doing the research, honestly, because nobody knows everything. So I spent an hour on a problem. I was trying to do, not worrying about the details, but I was trying to parse query string data into JSON for anybody out there listening. And after an hour of this, and I was trying to write my own code to do it, and it was getting really hard, I called over someone, and the teacher said, oh yeah, Node already has a module that does this. And I went, no! But it was so funny because in the process, I had Googled this all over the internet, and I had found tons of people who had the same problem, who were professional developers, who had written code that I had then downloaded and tried to adapt to my purposes. Like, none of them found the Node module either. It's kind of hilarious.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
So that's life as a developer, I guess.
That's fantastic. So, Mark, I just have my own announcement to end here.
Go ahead.
So, How to Become Zuck Part 1, A Day in the Life of a Software Engineer, is now announced. It'll be launched February 1st. I have a link here to the video where I talk about that. You can link there, or you can click on that annotation there and see that video. So my challenge for the past year hasn't, I thought it would be getting great interviews. I just kind of book them and trying to find, you know, developers from Google and Facebook and Tumblr and all my favorite companies, but it wasn't. I actually got those interviews. The hardest part was editing it all, right? There was just so much of it. I have 2 terabytes of interviews, and most of which are not published on YouTube yet. They're not even up, right? So what I've done is I've taken the best and I've curated them to answer the questions that I thought, well, that the audience is telling me is the most important, right? You know, how to deal with the toughest job interviews at places like Google and Facebook and stuff like that. And so part 1 is a day in the life of what their job is actually like. It's not a romanticized notion, but what they actually do on a daily basis. And that goes for, you know, small startups in the Valley to, you know, more traditional corporate IT jobs, and big tech companies like Microsoft and Apple, who we spoke to recruiters and developers for. And then the second and third parts, these are 3 different video books, right? So the second and third part, which will be launched later on in the year, are Life at a Hacker School, which you're helping me a lot with. And then the third one is job interview prep, getting hired, job search, all that kind of stuff. And all the IT recruiters that we're speaking to are helping us with that. So I'm head down, knee deep in editing. Like I'm talking like 12 hours a day to get this all polished and ready to launch for February 1st. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, thank you so much for meeting with us yet again.
My pleasure.
Should we? Yeah, I'll end that, and then we can talk about next week's schedule. But I'm assuming same time, same place next week. Is this a good time for you?
This is just fine. All
right. So again, for everyone, this will be next Thursday night, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's midnight Eastern Standard Time. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comments below. Email me at jace@howtobecome.tv, or you can tweet us at howtobecome.tv. So thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.